Welcome to Around the Blockchain. It's going to be a great episode. We have a tinfoil hat theory about Bitcoin. You're going to want to hear this one. Also, Raoul Paul, what's he saying about Bitcoin in this upcoming macro environment? And DCG halting dividend payments. Is this a sign of things to come? It's going to be a great episode. Some of my favorite guests on the top right, holding it down. It is Altcoin Daily. As far as I know, the #1 crypto Twitter as far as followers and content as well. Also, we have RiceTVx, some of the best interviews with some of the best people in the space, including hard to get names. So check out his channel for sure. Then we have Mr. I Stream the Fed Minutes himself. It is Tom Crown. Some say he's pretty good at Valorant as well. You have to check out his streams. He'll tell you all about it. And friend of the channel we haven't had in a while, it is Hashoshi. Hashoshi, how have you been lately?
Pretty good. Had a kid, so I've been
Hey,
busy.
oh, you had a kid. I guess that's an excuse for, not giving us videos every single day. But yeah, man, you got to bring it back. You got to bring it back. All right, it's going to be a great.
If he physically had a kid, he definitely needed a break.
Yeah,
Seriously,
I mean, that's
physically.
It's a sleep issue. At least it happened during the bear market, not the bull market. Can you imagine that? You don't want to do it during November highs. Hey, you got to make a choice, Bitcoin or baby. I know what I'm choosing. All right, let's talk about Bitcoin though, and the tinfoil hat theory is gaining a lot of popularity. It is suggested this is one of the reasons, if not the reason, Bitcoin is pumping, and it might be for ransomware hacks. This was just shown on Tucker Carlson, I believe, the night before last. His show has millions and millions of viewers. This is about a 20-second clip we're going to play here. I believe you should have the audio.
Medical school paid more than $1 million in Bitcoin, and they paid it in order to get access to their own computers, which had been frozen by hackers. They were held up for ransom. So what if the same people or similar people just did something very much like that to the FAA and then to the government in Canada and also the government of the Philippines?
All right, so he's bringing up the FAA grounding flights here. Just a couple of quick facts on that. We haven't grounded flights since 9/11. We just grounded them, I believe, last Wednesday. 1 day later, they were then grounded in Canada. And 2 weeks before that, New Year's Day, they were grounded in the Philippines. And apparently we were supposed to have a system followed by a backup system, and both of which went down. And we haven't been given any explanation from the Transportation Department. Altcoin Daily, I'm sure you've seen this rumor. When you first heard this rumor, did you just quickly dismiss it? Or do you think that maybe there is a little something here?
Hey, DZ, nice to be here. When I first heard this rumor, it was just hours ago preparing to come on this show. So, you know what? My mind was blown. Basically, the theory is this. As Tucker Carlson said, a number of different nations, their airlines are, going out like for, in different countries. And the theory is that somebody is holding these different governments for ransom, and they're forcing these governments to pay a ransom in Bitcoin. That's the theory, correct?
Yes, that is. I was actually trying to pull up a graphic. We might have a graphic, where it actually shows the dates of these things happening, followed by Bitcoin's somewhat parabolic price action here. Yeah, here are the timings of the failures. You can see the Philippines and you see the U.S. And then, they're suggesting that ransomware was what pushed open or pushed up the order book there, causing a spike in price.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's hard to believe charts like this. It's like correlation versus causation. Are they necessarily correlated? It's kind of far-fetched. And, thinking about this, first of all, many governments, including the US, do own some Bitcoin. So, I mean, the theory is that Bitcoin's price is going up, Bitcoin's hash rate is going up because governments are all of a sudden trying to get all this Bitcoin to pay the ransomers. A lot of governments already have Bitcoin. Would the governments want to use Bitcoin to pay a ransom? They wouldn't because there's more private solutions. The ransomers would, like we've seen before, because Bitcoin can't be clawed back. Overall, DZ, I think it's far-fetched.
All right, quick follow-up, Altcoin Daily. Do you think if there was, say, some treasurer who controls the government's Bitcoin, do you think it's possible that they maybe just don't want to sell during the bear market? Or they'd rather not give up their Bitcoin and spot buy it instead?
I think It's possible. I mean, you could go either way depending on what person is running what government organization. I'm sure there's some people in the government, high up in the government, that know about Bitcoin, know about different cryptos, know about the value prop, and probably think it's a good idea to start accumulating some Bitcoin or some Ethereum or some crypto, even though it's a small part of their overall reserves. There are probably some people in the government who think that's a smart idea. On the other hand, I think there's a lot of people in high positions in the government who don't necessarily think, yeah, Bitcoin will go up from a bear market. They don't care because they have billions and billions and trillions of dollars at their disposal. So they probably don't care at this point.
All right. Well, maybe there's a Jack Ryan analyst in there. You know, he's just kind of forcing the way here. He's not giving up hope. RiceTVx, is it too far fetched to think that they would pay ransomware in Bitcoin or even market buy the Bitcoin? Why or why not?
Okay, first of all, thanks again for having me back on Around the Blockchain. And I definitely agree with what Altcoin Daily said as far as governments already have a lot of Bitcoin in possession, especially the United States government. So they wouldn't need to market buy. That wouldn't make any sense. And I don't see the US paying any ransom. Um, why these ransomware people would even want to be using Bitcoin doesn't make any sense. It would make so much more sense to be using a privacy related coin such as Monero, which would make so much more sense because then you can't really trace back who the person is. With chain analysis, I mean, enough chain analysis, they're going to be able to determine the IP address and all the information they need to be able to find this individual that's wanting the ransom. So if they were to pay it, it would just be like basically a fishing expedition to be able to discover who the individual actually is. Now, this obviously has nothing to do with the fact that we had a delayed Santa Claus rally because we never seen one of those in December this past year. The CPI data had nothing to do with it. The expectations of the Federal Reserve had nothing to do with it. DXY losing momentum had nothing to do with it. It had nothing to do with an FAA computer outage. It had nothing to do with the World Economic Forum.
Okay, a lot of definitely's there, and I'm picking up what you're putting down there, Rice. Now, Hashoshi, do you think that maybe the real conspiracy is, the spreading of FUD by the media and by the Department of Justice here? Do you think that they know there's no Bitcoin being market bought by the government and maybe just trying to push a message?
I mean, maybe not deliberately, but I know that there's very often an opportunity that arises. There's already a lot of angst and anger amongst a lot of folks in the media right now around Bitcoin and crypto and its relationship to ransomware attacks. And so if people are making those things kind of go together and they're writing stories about it, the government may not want to, or officials might not want to go in and say, "Oh, hey, that's not that's not the truth." They might just let people think what they want to think, and whether that's negative for Bitcoin and crypto, I guess that's up to everyone to decide for themselves. But from my perspective, the thing that's missing here is transparency in the first place. If you look at a private company, when critical systems go down and there's downtime, especially stuff that affects critical infrastructure, there's pretty quickly a postmortem. What happened? What's going on?
Yeah.
Communication around how they solved the problem and maybe who was responsible. Hopefully that comes, but that's the big thing that's missing right now in this whole situation with the FAA, and that creates speculation, and that can be positive or negative for depending on who you ask. Right.
Well, similar to our electric grid, we didn't really get any answers. Hashoshi, do you think that they'll just keep this secret under the guise of national security?
Probably. I'm just saying, I think that if you think about it from an ethics perspective, the same transparency, if it were a ransomware attack or if it were just someone who made a mistake, right? This private company would have to share what happened, why, how they fixed it, and how they're going to prevent it from happening in the future. I think that same rule should apply to governments, right? And these systems, because honestly, open source software and building software, it requires people to understand what went wrong so they can write better software in the future. And that's
All right.
important for governments and for private.
I'm glad you said better software. Tom Crown, apparently we do need some better software. Go ahead, Rice.
Altcoin Daily.
I haven't gone yet. I haven't gone yet. You can wait.
Yeah, but Altcoin Daily's holding
Oh,
his
he
finger
did have
out.
his he had his hand up.
He is frozen.
Altcoin, go ahead.
This point is already too hyped up now. It's no big deal, probably obvious to everybody, and nothing really to do with Hashoshi's point, just something a little, piggybacking off what everybody else is saying. A big takeaway for me is that mainstream coverage of news and events isn't that different from independent content creators like you, like me, like BitBoy, like the BitBoy organization. Tucker Carlson likes Bitcoin a little bit. He likes conspiracies a little bit. He's got to get some content for his daily show. And I think, him drawing connections between the government and Bitcoin and ransomware, it's, there's some truth to it. I think it's not that different, and it's just good speculation in general. It's possible. It's good to think about this stuff, but it's not that different from the type of content that we create or BitBoy creates. And to me, as a content creator, it gives me hope.
Wait, was this
Well,
Tucker segment the equivalent of a thumbnail? A bad thumbnail?
It reminds me a lot more of Hollywood, which I know you dip your toes into the Hollywood game than necessarily what you mentioned. It definitely seems a lot more orchestrated in that aspect. Very, very
yeah. He just dips his toes. He doesn't dip himself into the adrenochrome, though. We made sure of that. All right, now Tom Crown. Let's kind of switch gears. Let's switch gears a little bit. He's Altcoin Daily is quite content with this life. I'll just leave it at that. All right, now Tom Crown, switching gears. We're talking about old, antiquated software. We have these failures. Do you think that blockchain could bring any solutions to the FAA or some of these, electrical grids, some of these infrastructure systems that we have in our nation? Or, is this just a pipe dream that us Bitcoin hodlers want to believe?
Blockchain is a new technology, and we're figuring out where it fits in the future. And it doesn't, you can't hold it against people if they're excited about any possible use, because the idea of decentralization is so new and exciting and full of promise. Unfortunately, I don't think it is the answer to every problem. There are centralized networks, and they provide services that don't really need to be decentralized. Kind of a fundamental aspect of being decentralized is you're sacrificing efficiency, and you're sacrificing, mostly efficiency, to remove control from a single entity in a network. So there are things that don't need to be decentralized. Flights probably don't need to be decentralized. I don't think that those are the problems cryptocurrency is going to solve. Yeah, I may be wrong. We'll see in the future. I really wanted to comment on the Tucker Carlson thing, though.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Guys, no politics involved in this. When I say this, I'm not political, but the dude's a clown. I mean, he's just yelling at Bitcoin. Like, where does this come from? Does he have any evidence other than flights were grounded, they're not grounded, and Bitcoin went up? That seems really kind of out there. I'll give it to him. Thanks for shouting out Bitcoin. And I did get to make it through everyone talking, and I still got my good point that no one came over. What was that?
And you got to shine bright.
No, that's not the point. I was waiting. Did you have something, Altcoin?
Well, yeah, you said
Mr.
Tucker
Aaron.
Carlson's a clown. I'm just surprised because a lot of people who, think like you, Nakamoto consensus maximalists into Bitcoin, Litecoin, Republican, Libertarian, they're saying Tucker Carlson's the only true person on the news. And now you're saying he's a clown. I just don't how do you go out to Bitcoin meetups?
I don't
Tucker
think
Carlson is the ultimate advocate for Bitcoin at this point. Yes, we need to pay our respect to Tucker Carlson.
Wait, no. So my point.
We're 4 years from him doing conspiracy theories about Cardano or some other altcoin. He just needs to learn about it.
Well, I welcome that, but
point.
just come at me with something other than just conjecture.
Right. Wait till Tucker learns about XRP and all that good stuff. Oh, wait till he learns about Hex. All right, well let's actually move on.
No, DZ, I have to quick.
Go ahead.
So my big point was
this.
Do I think the US government bought Bitcoin for this? Absolutely not. They have $3.8 billion from the Silk Road hack. Like, they're one of the biggest Bitcoin holders indirectly. They didn't buy Bitcoin for this. But this is an awesome thing because we don't get to talk about this often, is the end goal that isn't discussed is crypto or Bitcoin. Eventually, we want to see a run by governments printing money to buy Bitcoin. And so this kind of brings that back up, is it's in the direction I would like to see them in the future do this. But I think right now it's just like a silly conjecture.
All right, let's move on. But first, I'm going to dash a little hope for all the people who want this story to be true. I'm disagreeing with everybody. I don't think it's likely, but if it were to be likely, let's assume people might be able to track the payments to these hackers. And let's assume they might be able to then track that from the wallet to the U.S. government. And let's assume the U.S. government might not want that on the blockchain record. And so why not just market buy instead of pulling it from their multiple wallets? And there's been speculation that some of these larger Bitcoin wallets are potentially intelligence agencies. So let's just assume there could be reasoning. But again, I don't think it's likely. I think it is.
You're coming for Tucker's job, man.
DZ, I know that you're a hat fan. So I encourage
Yeah,
you
yeah.
to add a
And I don't
tinfoil
mind
hat
showing
to your apparel.
yeah,
No,
I
just
don't
you need
mind
to get a
showing it.
tinfoil hat to add to the apparel, though. You just
Oh
need
yeah,
one.
maybe we can get that. And you know, tinfoil also brought to you by Presin.io and Reynolds Aluminum Company. I just wanted to share that this section is brought to you
What
by
is
them.
Presin?
Presin.io is where you can send your crypto securely. And also the episode, while I'm talking about, brought to you by bcvault.com. So check out those two links are
I just
in the
don't understand. I
description.
can send my crypto securely without using something else. I
People
can
like
just use the
options. You
protocol.
know, if we are centralized, we would only have one way, but this is crypto, so we have multiple ways. And you know, Presin.io,
Congrats
they're
on
filling
getting a
the
This
gaps
sponsor,
is
there.
the
guys. I
way.
love it.
All right. And
This is
let's
the
talk
way.
about Raoul Paul. I have a picture of him here. This is him trying to figure out his seed phrase because he just forgot it. But he is throwing out a couple scary statements talking about the slowing down of interest rates. We had 4 consecutive 75 basis points, and then we just went to 50. He's saying the slowing down of interest rates are going to make people want to abandon these riskier assets like cryptocurrency. Now, Tom Crown, you're Mr. Fed Minutes himself, Mr. You know, watching you know, everything Jerome says. You know, you're watching the whole gang of thieves over there. You're draining the swamp. Do you agree or disagree with Raoul Paul's assessment? Is you know, essentially saying with interest rates high, you can get 4 or 5% risk free. Why would you dabble in something as risky as Bitcoin? What are your thoughts?
Hmm. Well, unfortunately, we don't have access to that 4 or 5%. That's for like the central bank lending. So we don't get that. I think honestly, DZ, I think Raoul Pal was saying the opposite. I think he was saying that the lowering of interest rates actually is a bullish case for risk on assets. As we see these interest rates come down, you know, Fed pivot. I said this actually in the AM show here a few days ago. Fed pivot isn't going to be tomorrow. Hey, inflation's not real. Let's go back to negative, I don't know, negative rates or something. It's going to be a progression. We're going to see it increase, kind of top out and come back down. And that's for the most part what we've been seeing in kind of the rhetoric and the language and even the BPS hikes. We went from 75 to 50, and now the market's looking for 25 in February. I think that is bullish for all assets. Should see the dollar to continue go down while you know, commodities, stocks, equities, whatever go up.
No, you're actually right. Yeah, painting a bullish, but I can't help but see it the opposite way. Rice, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? What do you think the traditional investors, they just got walloped? You know, the last 14 months been pretty painful for almost everybody in all the investment markets here. They see 4%, you know, maybe 3.5% risk free in these 6-month yields, these 6-month treasuries. Will they go after risky assets in this environment?
Not in the current environment that we're in. I mean, I agree with what Tom Crown said. I mean, we would have to fully see and know that the Fed's going to pivot, and that's going to really depend on the next few months. Whether or not people are expecting 25 BPS, I think it's going to be 50. The Fed said there's a lot more pain to come. And I definitely think that they're going to be playing that game as long as they possibly can. Now, at some point, the central banks will have to pivot. They won't have a choice. The Fed will not have a choice, but we're not there yet. And it may be this year, it may be next year. It's kind of hard to know, considering we're just in really uncertain times when it comes to the economic climate, because we could have a black swan event happen at any point that could just trigger something completely unknown that we're not even aware of. And we have all these other different mitigating factors, you know, possibilities of war, things stretching out, other economies having problems, the situations that we're having with our own political system. It's a lot to really grasp. So, I mean, this is a really, and honestly, I would, Raoul Paul is correct with what he's saying if the Fed pivots. But until then, people are, and institutional investors, traditional investors, they're going to stick with risk off assets until the Fed pivots. It's going to be risk off. And then once we see a reversal, then it's going to be, or excuse me, risk on. And then it's going to be risk off. So right now, people are going to be playing it safe. And when you're seeing treasury bond yield the way they are with the returns, you're seeing big institutional companies even selling real estate that they were accumulating through 2020 and 2021 because they're getting better returns from treasury bonds. So investors are always going to go where the money's at regardless, and they're going to do it in the safest manner that they know based off of the history of the markets.
All right, and you're bringing up the history of markets. Hashoshi, I want to talk to you about the history of rate changes here. More often than not, they're not changing anything. But, you know, if you just look at the last 5 meetings, last 5 quarters, they've been changing it, constantly. 75 basis points, 4 in a row, 50 basis points. Early on, once they were changing rates, Bitcoin there's a lot of volatility. There's a lot of trading. People were really just hanging on the minutes. The second a sentence came out, you could see volume really start to spike. Then I feel like there's diminishing returns with these rate changes. Do you think there's a little bit of trader fatigue or just investment fatigue with these interest rates? Are the interest rates just so baked in at this point you can't really trade any alpha here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that especially as the interest rate changes are reducing in volume, right? Or I guess in size rather. So you have 75 basis points. Now people are talking about 25. I agree with the earlier statement that it's more likely going to be 50, but honestly, who knows? The biggest thing that I'm thinking about right now with regard to interest rates and the Fed and all the stuff that's going on there is that if you just look at where the money would have to come from to sustain upward market movement for things like Bitcoin and crypto, and you look at all the headwinds that you have with companies, with layoffs and all sorts of stuff in the equities markets, where's that money going to come from? I mean, people say, oh, well, institutions are going to buy in. They're going to buy all these low prices for Bitcoin and Ether. I don't know about you guys, but I haven't really seen this ravenous appetite from institutions either. You say, okay, well, maybe governments are going to buy it or going to buy the bottom and try and ride it up to the top. You're not really seeing that either. So again, where does the money come from to sustain upward movement in these huge risky asset markets like Bitcoin and Ether and the broader cryptocurrency markets, altcoins, for example, wild west. So until you start to see the culmination of all the things that are going on right now, you're seeing layoffs, people talking about recessions, which we're already in from the terminology of a recession. We've had, GDP issues for a while now. We've had lack of growth. And I think there are people that are really, really fearful still, sitting in cash looking for lower risk options. So to me, I just don't see a place right now for people to be trading heavily in crypto on these basis point and Fed meetings.
All right. Well, Altcoin Daily, Hashoshi just turned me into a bear. I'm freaking out now. I'm scared. Now, where is the money going to come from? Where do you think the money can come from that, can help push Bitcoin's price to potentially a new all-time high? Is it going to be countries? Is it going to be retail? Is it, can we get a meme stock craze for coins? Where does the money come from?
DZ, don't be scared. Me and BitBoy are going to make it all okay. It's all going to work out, buddy. Now to answer your question,
market buying? You're market buying? Starting when? Where's your targets?
Just giving you comfort, buddy. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
Anyways, just trying to make
Virtual
a joke.
hug.
Some of them don't always work out. Where's the money going to come from? First of all, what Raoul Paul was saying was that the Fed does, with the interest rates increasing them, doesn't even have to pivot. Just the continuation of the slowdown, going from what was 75 basis points to 50 basis points, a 25 basis point increase, which would be the rate of that, the increases would be slowing down. Just even that would be bullish for risk assets. And for people like Raoul Paul with Real Vision, where he deals with, speculating and investing in non-risk assets, but also risk assets, and even people like us who deals in cryptocurrency, that kind of thinking, if that happened, I want to believe, because that would be great for our businesses. And eventually that will happen. If it's going to happen, if it's going to be bullish for crypto and risk assets, if the Fed just continues slowing down their basis point interest rate increases, I want to believe that'd be bullish, but who knows? Definitely a pivot. Now, as far as where's the money going to come from in general, I think a slowdown or pivot needs to happen, and then it's going to be a continuation of what we saw last cycle. Nothing special. I mean, I guess in 2017, Bitcoin and crypto pumping primarily from retail. In the last cycle, 2020, 2021, came from more institutional based clients. And I think next cycle is going to be a continuation of both of those. Countries, not yet.
All right. How many cycles away for countries for sovereign money?
350? No,
okay, 350. About 350.
Yeah.
3.5 years.
I don't know.
3.5 years. So the next cycle. All right. Altcoin Daily saying
no. I mean,
sovereign money.
Here's the thing. There are countries like El Salvador which are buying Bitcoin right now. I would hope we're going to see a continuation of that public small countries coming out in the next cycle. So there's just more than one, more than El Salvador. I think in 10 years, we'll see some mid-sized countries doing it.
Okay, all right. I will agree. I would say next
Hey,
8 years we'll get a top 100 country. Rice TV, go ahead.
I will add that, as much as I'm not a fan of regulation, that when we have some regulation, which I think is coming sooner than later, that we will see the floodgates open and that we will see lots of different money from institutions to sovereign funds to nation states to the best of all, the Dubai money.
Yeah, and they're talking
I'm
about it
waiting on that
right
Dubai
now
money.
in Switzerland, I'm sure. All right, let's talk about DCG, Digital Currency Group. They are halting quarterly dividends to conserve their funds. This is a letter to the shareholders that just released. They say they're committing to enhancing their balance sheet by reducing their operational costs and cash management. And this comes on top of them laying off 30% of their employees at Genesis. Now, a bankrupt DCG does not sound like something fun. Hashoshi, I didn't even know that they were paying out dividends. When I learned that, I actually had to question. I was like, I I didn't even really know private companies did that or just formalized it quarterly like that. So as I was doing my investigation in DCG, started looking at their subsidiaries. We know they have a broad portfolio, including things that are publicly traded. How would a bankrupt DCG affect the crypto market? Are you looking at not as bad as FTX or worse than FTX?
I think FTX was an immediate shock because of how many just individual people and how many treasuries for projects, and we don't even know about all of those yet. That was just such a public disaster because it was an exchange. It was a custodial entity. DCG is a little bit more complex because there's so many different relationships. There's so many different companies. You have, products as well, the
Grayscale
GP,
Bitcoin Trust.
BTC, yeah, Grayscale. So you have a lot of moving parts there. You don't know what's affected. You don't know what's going to be okay there. And so there's going to be a lot to unpack in all of that. And in the process of Chapter 11 and in bankruptcy, a lot of those things are going to come to the fore. But it could take years for all of that stuff to get figured out. I think the immediate thought is assets that that this digital currency group or heavy purveyors of will likely be affected. I actually think they still have on their website a whole list of all the assets and companies that they've invested in. So you can go in there and look. And I wouldn't take it too seriously. Take everything with a grain of salt. Don't go and panic and say, oh, my favorite assets on this list, it's going to zero. I'm not saying that. Those are things that could be affected. Right now, though, the biggest thing is DCG is in this mode where it's trying to salvage itself. How can we save DCG? And I feel like there's going to be companies underneath that are sacrificed altogether for DCG's survival and for its brand to survive as well. So it's going to be a really messy one. I'm not sure that we're going to have the answers. It's going to be a slow burn, if you ask me.
All right, yeah, a lot to untangle there. Now, Altcoin Daily, DCG collapsing, obviously, very, very horrible for the crypto industry. I want to ask you the same thing. Do you think it'd be as bad as FTX or not as bad? But I also wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts on Grayscale's Bitcoin Trust? I remember the narrative of late 20, early 21 that this is the thing that's going to get the 401ks and your plumbers and your teachers unions are all going to buy this Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. Are those days over for that narrative to maybe push Bitcoin's price?
Grayscale Trust. I hope things aren't over for them for the sake of the cryptocurrency market, and I mean the sake of the people who bought into to Grayscale's Bitcoin Trust. I mean, even for Grayscale, it's their main moneymaker, holding those coins for people, making that commission. Now, just generally with this news for Digital Currency Group, it's not exactly instilling confidence each time that they announce something like, oh, laying off 30% of staff. This one with the dividends, we're no longer.
Yeah,
doing
it's all
dividends.
bad news. Yeah, so it's just a trickle of bad news. Give us something here.
And next it's going to be we're making sure all lights are turned off after 6 p.m. and we're going to feed the cat every other day. I mean, I think they're trying to hold out.
Yeah, we cut to dry food from wet. We're cutting costs. Yeah.
Exactly, dude. I mean, it seems like they're trying to hold out for this is what some people are speculating for the Bitcoin market to kind of come back up a little bit, trying to not reveal their cards, maybe make some of it back before they have to reveal all their cards. But these series of announcements about how they're cutting all this stuff doesn't exactly instill confidence.
Yeah, I'm not feeling too good about it. Now, Tom Crown, I want to ask you a trading question, and if you want to share something specific, that's great. If not, that's totally okay too. I saw a thread talking about some FTX coins where FTX had over 90% of a supply, but it was locked up in bankruptcy court, meaning essentially, there's only 10% of the coins floating around. There's a little bit of a trading opportunity there. What are your thoughts on trading while maybe 99% of something's locked up in bankruptcy court? Is there upside potential for something like that? And is there any coins you're looking at in their asset balance that, hey, maybe there's opportunity here?
Nothing specific right now, but I mean, so many coins have the premise of like a unlocking or vesting schedule, and this is kind of like an enforced one, I guess. If the court really does have control of these assets, I will reluctantly say, yeah, that's kind of bullish. That reduces 90% of the potential selling pressure. I don't think I would trade off that personally, but that is on the better side than even usual because these vesting schedules, I think a lot of the time are just kind of a promise like, hey, we won't dump this for whatever amount of time. This is like they can't maybe. I'm always skeptical of those vesting schedules, but yeah, I think there could be some upside price action on that. We're seeing the entire market bounce, so logically, that's not a stretch.
Yeah, I remember hearing a rumor there's like 6 Bitcoin created every 10 minutes. I'm like, hey, stop inflating. Now, RiceTVx, I want to ask you, it's a little bit of speculation again. This isn't legal advice, but do you think that there's people in DCG and Genesis, are they starting to lawyer up behind the scenes? And what do you think that means?
I mean, that's a good question. I really don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but I'm sure there's a lot of people that work for the company that are worrying whether or not they're going to have a position. And it's interesting how this all begins with Genesis. Genesis is the
Mhm.
beginning, and it all started with Genesis. And now, I mean, from the article that you guys sent, we're seeing that not only are they halting the quarterly dividends, but they're also wounding down their wealth management division. So they're scaling down a lot of things, and halting the dividends could be good, but it's ultimately not a good sign. And I agree with what the other guest said. I mean, the contagion would be a lot worse than FTX. And there's an old saying that the straw that broke the camel's back, this would be it. And again, I don't really think that the bottom is in. A lot of my constituents agree with me that we have not hit the bottom as far as price right now. And something like that, DGC, the Grayscale Trust, something like that falling apart would definitely do it, in my opinion. So again, I just encourage people to make sure they're doing their own research, paying attention to what's happening, and just make sure that they're making good decisions because we're in really uncharted territory right now, and it
Rice
could get
TVX.
worse.
Real quick, I might ask everybody. You have a one-word reaction to the Department of Justice's huge announcement at noon today that they're going after the Russian exchange. Is it Bitlavo for I think $6 million?
Some unknown entity that we've
Yeah.
never heard of. My one word would be in family-friendly terms, BS.
All right, Tom Crown. One word. How do you sum up DOJ's huge announcement at noon today?
Nothing burger.
All right. Altcoin Daily. The markets were shooketh at 11:55 a.m. What was your reaction when you saw that?
And the news was that exchange we're just talking about.
Yeah, they hyped up this huge announcement. Oh, you're West Coast. I know it's 9 a.m. It's East Coast. We're up on it a little bit earlier.
I was
Uh,
just waking up.
Yeah, crack of noon.
California time. Yeah, big nothing burger.
And Hashoshi, what were your thoughts? You're muted. You're muted.
Speechless.
Of course, muted. No, my reaction was what? Yeah, the SBF tweet. What? It makes no sense. The whole thing makes no sense.
Yeah, I would give it a ridiculous.
Unrelated, I mean, obviously there's things that correlate. And honestly, just looking up stock market news, you'll see that the stock market today, the Dow loses acceleration and it closes down more than 600 points. So there is correlation in the stock market, and that DOJ meeting had nothing to do with the traditional markets. It was about cryptocurrency enforcement. So it had that meeting itself had nothing to do. It just was very, very coincidental in timing, because
Hey,
it was going to go down regardless.
we want to talk about coincidences. We were just talking about possible ransomware attacks being paid in Bitcoin, and now this going to, I don't know, just speculation.
Yeah.
Just speculation for the
Cray, cray.
conspiracy. Maybe tomorrow's episode, I will be wearing tinfoil hat. Again, big
I
shout
want to
out
get
to
you one.
Presyn.io, BC Vault. Looks like Altcoin Daily took it home. I think it was that extra 3 hours of rest. Yeah, I can see it. He's celebrating. He's happy. He's going to practice his Oscar speech. Altcoin Daily, feel free. Leave us with some parting thoughts, please.
Big thank you to, I've been slurring my words all day for some reason. Big thank you for DZ, the BitBoy organization, and the whole panel here. The next 10 people who follow my Twitter account, Altcoin Daily IO, and tweet at me, I just followed, and you're a new follower, and I'll be able to tell. I will retweet. Hopefully I see them. Make sure you tag us. Or the video dropping later today on our YouTube channel. If you comment under that video, I just started following you, and you're a new subscriber, and I can tell, I'll try and like that and elevate it. Maybe people will follow you. Anyway, guys, this is the year. Either the bottom already happened or it's going to happen next year. This is the time to tune in.
This is the time to tune in, and make sure you listen to what he said. You might get retweeted by the 2 Comma Club Twitter account there. And make sure you follow all 4 YouTube channels. Their links are in the description. Make sure you go there. Make sure you're subbed, and make sure you hit the like button right now. Do it. I'm waiting. Thank you. I felt it. We're now energized. That's all we got for today, Bit Squad. Until next time, easy out.